I was part of the radical left. And when you're part of the radical left, you have to hate Israel. To hate it as an outpost of capitalism, as an outpost of Western colonialism, an ally to the United States, which is, we all agree on the left, the worst of the worst things that has ever happened to humanity. I have nothing against the Jews, but I'm suspicious of the Jews, and I definitely am very critical of their country, and I basically believe that their country should not exist.
My guest today is one of the most fascinating voices I've encountered on Israel, anti-Semitism, and Western civilization. What's remarkable about Nikos Sotirakopoulos isn't that he defends Israel, it's that he didn't always. For years, he believed many of the same narratives that dominate college campuses, activist movements, and social media today. Then he began asking questions. The deeper he dug into history and human nature, the more his worldview began to unravel. Today, he argues that the battle Israel is fighting isn't simply about territory, it's a battle over civilization itself. Nikos, welcome to the show.
Your introduction said it all, indeed. Yes, maybe this is one of the reasons why I'm a bit more passionate about the topic of Israel than your average Israel supporter in the West, is because I know the other side, and I made all the mistakes that the other side is making. And this also makes me think that some of these maybe are honest mistakes. So there is maybe hope for some people on the other side, for those who are not motivated by the worst inside them, but by the best inside them. And maybe it's just an error of judgment. But we can discuss this further.
Yeah. So, as we mentioned, you openly admit that something very few people would ever admit publicly, that you used to hate Israel. But how did that happen? And how much did you actually know about Israel at that time?
Yes. How it happened in the simplest way, which is not being willing to think for myself and going with the opinion of the consensus of the society and the echo chamber I was living in. So my society was the Greek society, a society where the left was very, very powerful culturally. Remember, Greece was the country where Yasser Arafat would find refuge in the 80s. Till the early 2000s, actually till he died, he was the keynote speaker in the Congress of the governing Socialist Party. And it's not only that I was in Greece. I was part of the radical left. And when you're part of the radical left, it goes with the job description that you have to hate Israel, to hate it as an outpost of capitalism, first and foremost, and secondary, as an outpost, as Western colonialism, as lately became the fashion in progressive circles to put it. And you could say, okay, this is a political position. At this point, you're anti-Israel, you're not an anti-Semite. But then it goes deeper, because the deeper you go in the rabbit hole of Marxism, you find the figure of the Jew as being almost synonymous with the figure of the capitalist. So this is how anti-Israel sentiment, that Israel is this capitalist country, an ally to the United States, which is, we all agree on the left, the worst of the worst things that has ever happened to humanity. And also, obviously, we're not racist like these people on the right, but we know that the Jew is the figure who is a capitalist. So I have nothing against the Jews, but I'm suspicious of the Jews, and I definitely am very critical of their country, and I basically believe that their country should not exist. This is how a leftist would, for a lack of a better term, think, because this is not a subject of thinking. This is just the result of accepting every bromide that your echo chamber throws you without ever wondering to test them. And to answer your second question, how much did I know about Israel? I knew that just that I could name you the starting lineup of Maccabi Tel Aviv in basketball. That's all I knew about Israel. I knew Doron Jamsi and Oded Katas. If you told me, point to me Israel on the map, I had zero knowledge about the geopolitics of the area, the history of the area. Who is Israel's enemies? What do they stand for? I knew Palestinians are great people because they are the underdogs. I had no idea what Hamas was. What did Fatah actually stand for? I had heard, they're socialists. So well, we're all socialists, so they're probably the good guys. So this is the quick, let's say, overview of my ideas back then.
So now looking back, what were some of the biggest lies that you believed?
Well, the biggest of the biggest lies that I believe was that all the Palestinians want is a state, and Israel, first of all, it stole their land, and then it denies them a state. And I remember my surprise when I heard that there was something called, the Oslo something, and someone suggested to the Palestinians that they would have a state. I thought, okay, that's probably imperialist propaganda. That's never supposed to have happened. And then I remember running across a video by Prager University, something like 5 times Palestinians said no to a state, something like that. It has millions of views. And I thought, like, the lying and the propaganda of these people knows no limits. And then, the more I checked it here and there. So, oh yeah, technically they were offered the country, but who knows what other horrible things happened. And this was not a real offer. So it was impossible for me to accept that what is at stake here is not whether Palestinians will have a state. Because, one thing that is still the same with me is I think I still care about innocent Palestinians who want to live a peaceful life. And this is why I don't want them to live under Hamas, Fatah, and other wannabe dictators and wannabe, terror states. So, but it was impossible for me to realize that the Palestinian movement had a different agenda, not an agenda. We just need to want to have a state like everyone else and live a peaceful life.
So you believe that Israel was the primary obstacle to peace and that the Palestinians always wanted to have peace.
Exactly.
Correct. Yeah.
But also my surprise when I found out there were wars in the area that had nothing to do with Israel. For me, this was a huge surprise. When I found out about Libya under Gaddafi attacking its neighbors, or Nasser attacking Yemen, who knew? Without Israel, this was supposed to be the most peaceful place in the world. All Arabs are brothers. Why would brothers have war with each other? It must be something that has to do with Israel. But of course, it has nothing to do with Israel. Actually, some of the bloodiest conflicts in the area, Iran-Iraq war, the conflict in Yemen, not just now, but also in the 60s, had absolutely nothing to do with...
So I'm sure you've seen the clips of President Clinton speaking about Arafat and how I thought that he wanted to make peace and he lied to me and all that stuff. It came out pretty recently. So you've seen that.
It's the one time in my life I sympathize with Bill Clinton. Because you can see, you can sense, and if you know something about Clinton, this would be indeed his moment of, he would go down in history on this. And he tried. There's no question that he tried. And how interesting that on the other side, you had the Ehud Barak, the most decorated Israeli soldier in the eyes of everyone in the West. He was a hawk. He was an imperialist, and yet he basically gives everything. And still Arafat is not happy. We laugh at it, but it's a tragedy first and foremost for the Israelis who lost their life in the Second Intifada, and for the Palestinians who could be living in peace, and they're not because of that horrendous human being that was Arafat.
So I guess we learned from here that what the Palestinians want is everything. They don't want 95% or 97%. They want everything. So there's no such thing as a two-state solution, right? What do you think about that?
Well, ideally, there should be a two-state solution. But at the end of the day, it's if you want a state, actually, if the Palestinians, what they want is an ethnically pure state, you should already be suspicious that this is not a good start, guys. Like, again, I have a very unique theory of who deserves a state. It's a theory which is very much influenced by the ideas of Ayn Rand. And you don't have a state because you have, ancestors from 2,000 years ago. The only legitimate government is a government that, at least at some basic level, says, I'm going to defend the individual rights of the people who live here. I want to establish a realm of freedom of people living a good, peaceful life. If you have a state that already from the beginning tells you, if there's anyone from a different race here, it's a deal breaker. And by the way, I want my state to be a religious dictatorship. This already, in my eyes, means you do not deserve a state. You do not deserve a state. The people who want to live a peaceful life, and have the rights respected, they're the ones who deserve a state, and they are the ones who are being betrayed. Now, the big question is how many are the people who want this in Gaza and in West Bank? I don't claim to know the answer, but these are the people who I have all the sympathy in the world for.
What finally caused you to question those beliefs? And how many years ago was this?
Of course, I remember all this very, very vividly. So it started with me changing my views from not being anymore a Marxist. And it started with the contradictions that I saw in Marx. So I have here Das Kapital, and you see how much I've used it. I've struggled, I've grappled with this book, and I found questions that I couldn't find the answer. And at some point, a horrible question entered my mind. Could it be that Marx was wrong? And this started a process which became, could it be that many of the things I believed was not the truth? So I believe that capitalism just brings poverty. Wait a minute. Since capitalism appeared, everything goes up. The life expectancy, the wealth. It's like, oh my God, it's not that I was just a bit wrong. I was completely wrong. I was 100% wrong. And then I thought, what if I was wrong also on this other issue and this other issue? And I will tell you, Israel was the hardest pill to swallow for me. I was so convinced that, yeah, okay, but on that issue, best case, it's like 50-50. Best case, they're equally bad. Don't leave this aside. Don't try to find who's good and who's bad. But what actually made me change my mind, and it was circa 2016, was finding out a bit more about the history. And I found some moments in the Israeli history that spoke to me. It had the same appeal that as a kid I found in the Battle of Thermopylae with Leonidas and the Spartans, that the few are fighting the many. In my mind, it was always the opposite, that Israel is the powerful player. And it turns out in 48, you fought basically without an army, a proper army, against 5 different armies. Or in 67, you was 1 against 3. And if you had the Iraqis were ready 4. This is unbelievable. Or I remember reading about and watching every documentary I could find on YouTube about Operation Edebe, about Yoni Netanyahu going to another continent to bring back hostages and bringing them back. And you have only one loss. And this loss is the leader, the guy who said, I'm going to lead, follow me. So for me, this was also moving. So I realized, wait a minute, here we've got something. Like Israel is not just neutral. It's trying to be something good, first of all. A country that at least tries to respect individual rights, who is building science institutes. It's curing diseases. This is the contrast. On the one hand, you have a society that says, I'm a pioneer in curing rare diseases. And on the other side, you have societies who say, we don't care if our children die as long as we can kill you. And it's like, this is the contrast. One side deserves my support. It's not here a neutral situation.
The interesting part is that Israel doesn't only do this for Israelis. I mean, if there's any natural disaster around the world, like in Haiti, you can count them all. Who's the first people to show up? It's always the team from Israel to help in Turkey, whatever it was. So that shows you that it's not just for their own people. They can do it. They want to help humanity, but it's something that people don't usually talk about, right?
And it's part of the same celebration of an appreciation of life. Life is important. And we saw this also with the hostages. For me, the emotional, I don't know how to put it, this yellow thing about the hostages. I know many people, and people who I respect, they criticized it, or they said, you know what? This made the strategy of this war very skewed. You cannot hope at the same time to win a war and bring back hostages. I can understand all this, but at the same time, again, this principle, no one is left behind. As long as one person, one innocent is left behind, we're going to do everything to bring him back. For me, this speaks in my heart. It makes me emotional.
Wow. Now, when you watch these anti-Israel activists, do you kind of see your younger self as one of these anti-Israel activists? And has anything changed since then?
Well, I give one excuse to myself that I cannot give to these people. And it is that these people have watched, or they should have watched, October 7th. Because it happened in front of our screens. You had to live under a rock not to see the horror, or at least somewhere you heard. You know what? There were families, concert goers, innocent people, or they might have heard about this Thai worker that was that famous video, and they have no reaction to that. Like for me, this is it's very difficult to cut slack to you if you watch these things and your heart remain cold, and you said, yeah, these are the guys I want to be on the same side with. For me, this takes, and again, I can understand, I should have known things about Hamas back then, but how can you see this? How can you see this and tell yourself, yeah, I'm going to be on the same barricade with these guys. These are the good guys. It means that maybe you're almost gone to a point where I doubt whether there is return.
Now, we see the protests start as pro-Palestinian protests. The suffering in Gaza, we wanted to end. And somehow it shifts into, we support Hamas, we support terror organizations because it's a resistance. How do we go from one end kind of to the other?
I don't think there's much distance between them, because these people from the beginning, they have made up their mind. And they've made up their mind with two simple processes. The one is the process that says, look, Palestinians are the underdog. No more question needs to be asked. And we need to ask some serious questions and ask ourselves, how deep have to challenge, how brave are we in challenging this morality that says the weak shall inherit the earth? Because if we do not challenge this morality, forever the Palestinians, or for as long as they are the weak side, they will get the sympathy of the people. So we have to say, no, it is not a proper moral code to say, because you are an underdog, you deserve sympathy. You have to ask, first of all, why are you an underdog? Why is it that although you've taken all these loads of money and support, why is Gaza not like the rest, like the Emirates? Why is it not like a Dubai? But we don't ask this question. We just say they're weak, therefore we support. And the second is that these people have learned to hate everything that relates to the West. And this has been a process which I don't want to call it brainwashing, because it takes the responsibility for every individual who falls for that. But it's something akin to brainwashing, because you've heard it from school to university to postgraduate school. You hear it in Hollywood, everywhere. The West, even worse if you are white, then this is, no question asked. By the way, it's funny how in the eyes of, let's say, the left, the Jews are white. In the eyes of the Nazis, the Jews are not white. So in both cases, you are always on the wrong side. And again, it requires training of many years to develop such a moral degeneracy when you see on your screen October 7 and you side not with the victims or not with the abducted families, the abducted babies, for God's sake. You side with the perpetrators. It takes training to get you to such a level of moral decay.
Speaking about October 7th, I want to know what shocked you more. Was it October 7th itself, the attack, or the reaction to it afterwards in the West, around the world, the lack of sympathy for Israel? We saw October 8th, there were already protests even before Israel had reacted to it. What shocked you more?
Look, on the biggest shock was the attack itself, because I'm also interested on issues around, security, military strategy, all that stuff. And this attack is a huge, it's a bit like 9/11. I remember I asked once a professor I had, a very good professor at the university, how did this happen? And he told me, sometimes everything goes wrong. Sometimes everything goes wrong. And, I've tried to comprehend what happened that day, and it's incomprehensible. But although I'm a cynical and I thought I knew the left very well, the reaction absolutely shook me. I never expected, again, this level of moral degeneracy. We have to name it as it is. I think there's a good case to be made. I'm just coming up with this on the spot. Can you think a moment of moral degeneracy in the West since World War II as big as supporting Hamas? Maybe there is something and I'm missing it. Maybe the support for Stalin and for the Red Army after World War II, but at least then, they had the excuse, we defeated Hitler. So, okay, I get there is something that can fool you, but here it's maybe it is indeed the worst moral degeneracy that the West has experienced in the last many decades, what we saw after October 7th.
So do you think that October 7th kind of exposed anti-Semitism, or is there something even deeper than that?
You know, it's a very good question, Daniel. Is this, because these people will say, we're not anti-Semites, we're just against Israel. And I realized very recently, I came to the conclusion, to be honest, I don't care if it's anti-Semitism. It is still so morally repugnant that you see these two entities. I mean, okay, forget the Palestinians. You see Iran, for God's sake, institutionally misogynistic. A theocracy, a dictatorial theocracy. You see Iran and Israel. And from the two, you side with Iran. So I don't care if you are an anti-Semite, if you are an anti-Zionist. For me, the fact that you hate the West so much, that you side with the theocrats of Iran, the blood is still fresh on the street from like the bloom of the youth of Iran dying on the streets, and you side with these butchers. And I don't care if you're an anti-Semite. I couldn't care less. Many of them, maybe they are. But again, the moral failure they're showing, I would say, is, in my mind, at an equal level. Maybe we need to find a new term. Maybe anti-Semitism is not strong enough to capture what happens there.
What do you have to say about the United Nations that kind of takes these countries and puts them on the Human Rights Council, and they themselves are committing human rights violations day and night, and then they gang up on Israel and make all these different things, sanctions on Israel or whatever? What does that have to say about them?
Well, I have to say something that, I don't know how popular it will make me. I don't blame the United Nations. I blame the civilized countries that still have this thing, this farce of an organization. Actually, not farce. This is too soft. This monstrosity of an organization. The United Nations should not exist. The United States should kick them out of New York. Every civilized country should say, I am leaving this organization. Because think of what is the United Nations, and they should have done so from the beginning. The United Nations tells you, who are you? North Korea, Soviet Union back then, Iran. You are on the same moral standing with Switzerland, with England, with Italy, with the United States, and with South Korea. It tells you that the killer has the same seat on the table with the producer and with the creator and with the civilized person. So the United Nations is an abomination. Once you have accepted this abomination, then anything that this abomination brings your way, you have to bear the consequences. Because think of that person like Francesca Albanese. That person should be a person who should be the subject of ridicule and of scorn. But now she has the title something United Nations. And this person who should be treated in the same way we treat Candace Owens and Tucker Carlson or Nick Fuentes, she's on that category. But now we treat her, she's some United Nations. Okay, you've given, you people have given, every big civilized country, you've given this status to the United Nations, and now this status is giving legitimacy to these people who belong to the darkest corners of the internet doing podcasts with each other. But instead, we see them as paragons of...
Did October 7th permanently change how you view the anti-Israel movement? Like, did they sink to a level that you didn't think that they were able to sink to?
October 7th changed everything for me. So since October 7th, I became almost a single issue voter. I don't know how to put it. Actually, it's not a single issue because I also care deeply about I also care deeply, for example, about the Russia-Ukraine conflict. But yeah, it's the prism through which I judge everyone. And movements, celebrities. I judge you because October 7th was so clear. There was no gray zone. It was so clear cut. It was so crystal clear what happened and what the two sides were. So after October 7th, there is no excuse. And after October 7th, many things broke inside me. I never went to a football game of my football team again ever after October 7th. I cannot go to games and see the stadium full of Palestinian flags. Because I know, again, these do not care one iota about innocent Palestinians. These do not care one iota about innocent Palestinians. If Israel tomorrow decided to say, okay, guys, we pack things up, we go back to Europe, to the United States, we leave Israel. These people would stop caring about Palestinians tomorrow. And after that, you and me know the Palestinians would live under a state of terror, under a dictatorship. Women would be oppressed. The LGBT people would be oppressed. And all these people who now put the Palestinians flags, they could not care one iota. So this is why I told you, yeah, after October 7, I'm not the same person. I don't view the world under the same prism. I've become more cynical and more pessimist, actually, I'll have to say.
So you argue that this war isn't about borders, it's not about settlements, not even about land. So what is it about, if we can melt it down to the bottom line?
It's about two different views of life. It's about two different views of what is the good. And I've said it many times. It's an imagery that a friend of mine, Jonathan Down, put it on his Substack. Remember on the 12 Days War, the Iranians bombed the Weizmann Institute of Science. For me, this is such a brilliant moment that captures what this war is about. On the one side, you have a side which says, we devote our energy to an expanding life expectancy, curing disease. That's what we're good. Of course, because we're men and women of the mind, we're also good at violence when it comes to that. But mostly, we're good at building Weizmann Institute of Science. What is the other side good at? Throwing rockets at the Weizmann Institute of Science. This is what this conflict is about. Nothing captures this conflict as good as this image. The mullahs, the theocrats, the middle-aged nostalgists throwing rockets to the Weizmann Institute of Science. That's what this conflict is about.
I once heard somebody say the UAE, which, they're progressing, they shoot rockets to the moon, let's say, and Iran shoots rockets to their neighbors. Like that's
that's what happens. And again, now it's obvious for the whole world to see, and yet the world still cannot draw the right conclusions for reasons that would have to be here for days to elaborate on why this is happening.
But it seems like Israel has become the ultimate villain for the modern left. Why do you think that is?
Well, the mere existence of Israel is a refutation to the worldview of the left. What does the left tell you? It tells you that, if you're the little guy, there's no hope. Maybe one day, there's going to be a revolution. Till then, there's no hope. Here is Israel, people showing up to the desert, then people showing up literally straight from the concentration camps, and they win, and they build something, and they stand tall against, as your title says, stand tall against their enemies, right? Israel puts a mirror in front of every person who says, human beings have no agency. Like, what can you do? We cannot help it. Israel tells them, no, look what we did. You can do the same. You can do the same. And of course, this is a threat. So no. This goes against everything we thought. By the way, they're so stupid. They don't even realize that, at least in its early years, Israel is the closest we ever got to something like one form of socialism kind of working. Of course, I think it worked despite of its socialism, but that's another discussion. But they don't even have that level of historical consciousness of what the early Zionist movement was and what was the first couple of decades of Israel, what type of people were leading Israel. But of course, again, they don't know history. They're not part of any historical continuity with the left. That would at least demand of them some form of engagement with ideas, engagement with knowledge. And this is too much to ask from these people these days.
So basically, you argue that the unforgivable sin that Israel committed was that it succeeded, right?
Exactly. That it existed against all odds and that it succeeded. And that it did not remain this poor, weak entity. It said, no, we won wars, which we did not start, but we won these wars and we became more powerful. This is a sin that the left and the morality of today, unfortunately, cannot excuse Israel.
So why is it that victimhood nowadays is treated like moral authority? Like, if you're a victim, then you're on top. You succeed, you're on.
Look, the deeper answer is we'd have to face the elephant in the room, which is Christian morality. So I'm just putting it out there. I mean, that's, again, it's a big discussion we cannot have here. But on a more obvious level, victimhood is easy it's easy to look down. It's easy to look down to people, right? It's easy to come up with excuses. Victimhood doesn't require anything from you. You are a victim, stay forever a victim. You get sympathy. You didn't do anything to gain sympathy. You gain sympathy by not achieving anything. See, like the moral inversion there. And again, I have all the sympathy in the world for people who suffer without a fault of their own, who suffer and are trying to improve their situations. But the entity that is the Palestinian as a movement, I'm talking not about individual, like the Palestinian movement, does not meet any of these two conditions. They are in this situation based 100% on their own choices, and they're doubling down on these choices. This is why it's not a situation of, you're a weak side, but here's a hand because you're trying to climb. No, and that makes it even more of an insidious movement, that it cherishes this position of weakness and of suffering, the suffering first and foremost of their own people.
Now, why do progressive activists, they end up defending movements that oppose virtually every value that they claim to support? Like you have Gays for Gaza. If they were in Gaza, they would be thrown off the roof, right? But still, they want to support them regardless.
I'm grappling with this question a lot, and there are two answers. One answer is about the worst people in these movements. The other is about the better people. The worst people, at the end of the day, it turns out they're not motivated by support and sympathy for anyone. Like, they don't care about women. We have to face it. They don't care about gay people. They don't. I mean, if you show sympathy to the mullahs, you cannot ever again convince me that you ever cared about women or gay people. These are the worst, mostly, and also usually you'll find these are the leaders of such movements. Mm-hmm. The better people, maybe they're so fused with this idea of sacrifice and of unearned guilt. So I have a roof over my head, air condition, I live in the West. These people must be suffering because of me. It makes zero sense, but anyway. So they say, I would rather suffer. And we have cases, right? We have cases of Western activists who went to Gaza and Hamas killed them. And this is, unfortunately, this is where this ethos of sacrifice leads you to, that you become cannon fodder and you think you deserve it. And I mean, how insidious that these ideas destroys your self-esteem so much that you accept the role of the sacrificial sheep.
Yeah, I interviewed Dr. Gad Saad. He wrote the book Suicidal Empathy, which describes what we're talking about. Now, how did universities become this ground zero for anti-Israel activism?
I wish I had a good answer. Again, whenever there's something bad happens in the world, conventional wisdom says follow the money. I say don't follow the money, follow the ideas. Follow the ideas. I'm sure there's a lot of money from we know where, Middle East, going to universities, but that's not the main thing. The main thing is a chain of different thinkers, of different movements that told the West, whatever you stand for is bad and everyone that stands against it is good. Reason is bad. Oh, how can you know the world? This is your truth versus my truth. Success and achievement is bad. For someone to achieve, someone else has to lose. Or we're not individuals, we're members of groups, and groups are in different hierarchy relations with each other. People take ideas seriously. People at some level need a philosophical view for the world to make sense of them. And they have swallowed this poison, whether the poison is Marxism or the New Left, identity politics, intersectionality, how it's called, the positionality theory, standpoint theory. When you swallow all this poison, again, then there is no end to how low you can fall. And yeah, you will support Hamas, you will support even worse things, if there are worse things.
Many people understand this anti-Israel sentiment on the left, but fewer understand what's happening on the right. What is happening in your mind?
I think, so, I mean, at one level, for some small part of these people, the answer is obvious. It's the old anti-Semitism, which maybe never went away. But the big question is what happens with the rest of the people who did not wake up one day and decide they're anti-Semites? I think the biggest intellectual poison in the right today, also in the left, but also in the right these days, is tribalism. And tribalism is you see the world through competing groups. And tribalism can lead to contrarianism. Contrarianism says, whatever they tell me is truth, the powers to be, I will believe the opposite. Or they told me the Holocaust was the biggest crime of the 20th century, I won't believe them because maybe they lied to me with the Iraq war or with the vaccines or whatever. Therefore, now whatever they tell me, they're lying to me. So this creates this toxic view that whatever stands for decent truth, I will side with the other side. And also tribalism requires you to find an other, an enemy. And who is a more convenient enemy than, the powerful? Like someone controls the government. Who controls the government? The globalists. Oh, who are the globalists? Oh, these people with Jewish-sounding surnames. But now they're not even that. It's like, oh, it's Netanyahu. As if Netanyahu could control Trump and everyone like Trump. So it's this conspiratorial view of the world, a view of the world based on tribalism and contrarianism, which is basically you destroy your mind. And now you cannot think and you believe every garbage based on this very simple scheme of there's conspiracies everywhere. I cannot anymore believe anything. By the way, they've borrowed this also from the left. This is the postmodernist view that tells you there is no truth, there is no reality, everything is a lie, everything is a big scheme.
Yeah. It seems like, for example, when you listen to Tucker Carlson, he has his mind made up of what he believes in. And no matter how many facts you put in front of him, it's not going to change his mind. For example, he came to Israel. He didn't even want to leave the airport. He had a conversation with Ambassador Mike Huckabee, and he claimed that Christians are suffering in Israel, but yet they're flourishing in Qatar, for example, when the facts show the opposite. So even when the facts are staring you in the face, these people cannot change their minds.
Well, for the facts to have any effect on you, you need to have a tool and you need to believe that you have the tool to navigate the facts. And this tool is your mind, that there is such a thing as reason. You're talking here about the guy who is telling us that there are demons who are scratching him at night. There's no reason to this guy. This was the guy who interviewed someone, it was a homeless person who said, I had homosexual sex with the president of the United States. You can expect anything from this guy because, again, his navigating tool, his mind, it has atrophied. He hasn't used it for ages. And, people say, is he grifting or does he actually believe these things? I think at the end of the day, there comes a point where these two things are blurred. When you adopt this character, when you play this figure, you become that. Like, who is he? Is Bruce Wayne Batman or Batman Bruce? At some point, it doesn't matter. Bruce Wayne becomes Batman. And Tucker, even if they started with, because there's no question he was a clever guy. I think at some point, he got high in his own supply. And I believe his mind is broken.
How dangerous is it when you have, for example, also Candace Owens, who loves pushing these conspiracy theories? Israel was involved in killing Charlie Kirk, things like that. And they have such an enormous audience and it spreads. How dangerous is it that nowadays we have one person that can just feed misinformation, disinformation to millions of people?
It is very dangerous and it is worse than you think. Here's why. Because think of a next step. Think of the worst people of the right, the Candace Owens, and the worst people of the left meeting each other. And their focal point is their hatred for Israel. You have this union of deplorables. Imagine a Hassan Piker and a Candace Owens and a Nick Fuentes, all these people on the same side. My prediction is this is something that could happen. And it's not going to have as its figurehead someone so deplorable, because this won't fly. But imagine a left-wing populist who will use all the populist cards of the left and will throw on the table as a trump card the anti-Israel stuff to make sure that he gets also the worst people from the other side. For me, this is the worst scenario. These people stop having discussions amongst them in the podcast sphere and finding one semi-respectable leader and building a movement around it, like a populist MAGA-type movement that will not have, let's say, the pro-Western or at least, the pro-Israel stuff that is existing at least around Trump in part of his circle. Imagine this completely stripped, and you only get the populism, the crazy theories. This is something that could happen, and that is the worst scenario.
Now, what role does social media play also in shaping the minds of people in this war, in what side they should side with?
Well, obviously, it's an echo chamber, but also they play the opposite. They can play the opposite role. Like, I never expected that my most successful videos would be on Israel. And this gives me courage that there are people who recognize that you can change. One can change, and people appreciate that story. So maybe I wouldn't have changed my political views without the social media and without the internet. So yeah, to the worst people, it is doing a lot of damage, but we could say many of these people were beyond redemption. But to the people who still have something within them that is approachable, maybe I try to be optimist here. You see that maybe there is something positive they can do.
Do you think that there's some people that oppose Israel because they need somebody to blame? For example, I'm not successful in my own life, so I need to blame somebody, right?
I
Is
don't
that also
remember who said it, but it is such a wise saying that even if the Jews did not exist, your life would still be equally miserable. I don't remember where I saw it. Was it a film or something? But it is very true. Anyone who tries to find a scapegoat, anyone who is a loser, authoritarianism breeds on loser. How do I know? I was one. And I look back to myself and I cringe. Actually, it's not even cringe. It's something very scary. First of all, not based on what you're going to do to other people. It's not about you will go and do Kristallnacht. First, what it does to yourself, it ruins your life. Because you adopt this identity, this character of the loser, and now you breed this, you ooze this resentment, and you want to feed it even more. You want to, you need the oppressor, you need the figure of the Jew, because without it, you're left alone standing with the mirror, and what you see in the mirror is not good at all. At least you can put the Jew in front of the mirror, and it's like, oh, I don't see the loser that I am. If it weren't for the Jews and the capitalists and the globalists, I would be. By the way, if it weren't for the Jews, you would not be able to survive many of the diseases that are actually curable. Because go and check which is one of the countries which is at the top, together with the United States, in bringing life-saving technology. But the problem is with such people, life is not their standard. What they actually want to see is not human flourishing, people being happy, people being successful. Again, everyone who is successful is a threat to you, because then it begs the question, why are you not successful if we live in a world where success is possible?
Yeah. Now, you said that some people are not merely anti-Israel, they're anti-civilization. You also said that they're anti-life. Can you explain a little bit more about that?
Well, life has some conditions to make it possible. We need, first and foremost, freedom. To be free to, first of all, decide what we want for our lives. No two people are the same. So I need free. Might want to do one thing in my life. You want to do something else. And one thing that the West has going for its way that defines it as the West is that it was a society that was built on the principles, let's allow people to live and to live life as they want. Now, some countries went closer to that. Some others went not that close. But this was a generally accepted principle that, yeah, you have a right to your own life. I mean, I wish we would go full on to that idea. But that's what the West and what Western civilization is for me. Now, if you see the society of Iran or the society of the Houthis or the society of Hamas, it's a society that makes life impossible. You cannot be free. You're not free to think, to express your thoughts, to go your own way. You might fall in love with another guy. A guy marries a guy. That's what his happiness requires. This is not allowed in these societies. I mean, I just gave one example that will be easy for many people to understand. Or, I want to be an artist. Oh, no. You're going to be a farmer because, or give, whatever you make, give it to the thugs of Hamas. So life is not possible there. This is why I'm saying this is a battle between a society geared around life and a society geared around destruction. And again, try to imagine these societies without the West. Where would they be? without the medicine, the technology, and actually the money that the West is giving. Try to think what would happen to these societies, and you have your answer why I claim the one is the side of life, the other is the side of death.
Yeah. Now, we've seen on the past, let's say, decade that Europe has kind of gone down. It seems like it's forgotten what it stands for. The demographics has changed. The anti-Semitism is through the roof. The establishment is become weak. What do you think it is going on in Europe?
Look, there are two problems. The one is imported, the other is native. And maybe the worst is the native after all. The elephant in the room here is there are hundreds of thousands of people in Europe who, based on their culture and where they come from, they're institutionally anti-Semitic. There's no other way to put it. Since they are kids, they are taught that the Jews are bad and the Zionist entity and all that stuff. As if this was not bad enough, you have an educated elite which is coming up, which does not believe in Western values. It doesn't even believe that it has a right to defend itself against hostile cultures and hostile values. So this is what's happening in Europe. It's a perfect storm. The better people need to rise up against this. First of all, on the level of ideas and on the level of politics, because if the best people do not do this reaction will be left to the worst people. We're going to have, again, examples of, bad players. You want to call it far right, I don't know how you want to call it, but they will fight this threat, but not fight it based on the principles of freedom, of classical liberalism, of all that stuff. So I think this is why the best people, the people who believe in freedom, they are the ones who should say, guys, we have a problem in Europe, and it's time to realize it. We have a problem.
Do you think that this issue could be turned around, or we're kind of dealing with something that's irreversible?
Nothing is irreversible. Here's how you can turn it around in simple terms. Simple doesn't mean it will happen. First, every Western European leader should declare symbolically, I don't know how, declare war on the ideology of radical Islam. You could say this ideology has been at war with us. Guys, sorry. If you're a peaceful Muslim praying, go on your way. But if you're someone who wants to see us go down, then you're not welcome here. The second thing is you should have very, very severe limitations to the welfare state. This would already solve a big part of the problem. The third thing is anyone who you have, and with the money you save from that, you very strongly hire people and recruit people in the security services. And then you have these communities under very close observation. I have a motto on Twitter whenever I hear news saying they put security guards in synagogue. My motto is for every 3 security guards in a synagogue, you should have 30 security guards infiltrating the communities that are the reason the synagogues need security guards. And if you do this, you can solve the problem. You can tell these people, your ideas are not welcome here. If you don't want to be here to work, you are not welcome here. And if you have bad ideas and you want to act on them, we are following you very closely and we're going to throw the book on you. Anything we can find to every legal way that does not go against the rule of law, this is going to happen to you, and eventually you might find yourself out of here if this is possible under the rule of law. That's the only way that you can do this without losing your identity as a free society, as a rights-respecting society.
Now, I want to ask you a final question. You spent years believing the things that millions of anti-Israel activists still believe today. You escaped that worldview. Now, if you could sit down with a college student who's waving a Palestinian flag in one of the elite colleges, and you had just a few minutes before they made up their mind about Israel, what would you tell them? If you could tell them something, what would you tell them?
I wish it would be that simple, but the first thing I would like to understand is, where is this guy coming from? Because again, maybe he thinks he's correcting an injustice. Maybe, so I would just, the main question was, what are you after? What do you want? If he tells you, look, there are many people, hundreds of thousands of people who live in tents and they shouldn't believe it, so okay, now we have a common ground. Now we can at least start the discussion. Maybe we'll see where this discussion will end. So I would try to see what are the values that motivate these people. And if there's something there, then a process can begin. I wish it was You know, you've seen these videos like Tony Robbins, I'm going to make you quit smoking and I'm going to use a neuro-linguistic program. It can't work like that. I would try to see if there is something, if there's a bridge of values, your values are similar to my values, then maybe something could begin and who knows where it would end. But that would be the only way.
Okay. Nikos, I really, really appreciate this conversation. I learned so much from you. Thank you so much for your time. And
Thank you, Daniel.
how can people follow you and learn more about you?
The easiest way is YouTube and Twitter. That's where I'm more active. I mean, I have a very unusual name and surname. You'll find me on Twitter and on YouTube. Or if you want to find one place where you can find about also my community in Patreon or anything about my work, nikos.org. Simple, go there. That's also a good starting point.
Thank you. Thank you again. Wishing you all the best.
Thank you very much, Daniel.
If you have a 401k or an IRA, please listen. Gold is at record highs. What many people don't know is this: you can move part of your retirement money legally and without tax penalties into physical gold you actually own. Alpha Omega Gold helps you do this through a gold IRA. Your gold is real, it is stored safely, it is in your name. Learn more at ao.gold/stand. Alpha Omega Gold is our sponsor, and they proudly stand with Israel.